Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of our podcast. I am with Miss Logan. You are a kindergarten teacher, correct?
Yes.
And Miss Allen, I believe you teach fourth grade, right?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Spencer, we all know you. You teach freshmen, sophomores. Wait, not sophomores. Just freshmen and juniors, right?
Algebra 1, Algebra 2.
Alrighty then. So, it was the National Teachers Mathematical Conference, right? Is that what you guys went to, or did I miss that up?
Yeah, National Council of
Okay.
Teachers of Mathematics.
Alrighty. So moving on to our questions. For first, I have Miss Logan. What is the most impactful session or presentation you attended at the NCTM conference, and why did it resonate with you?
I think one of my favorites was the combination between adding ELA and math and how we can bring them together and have engaging lessons that still, while yes, they are teaching reading, they are really impacting our math and how our kids learn. My favorite part of it was number stories. So say you are teaching addition to my kindergartners, I would say, okay, instead of saying, we have 9 boys who are playing soccer and then 5 more join. How many do you have? Instead of adding those numbers, we want it to be a little more complex and allow them for further thinking. So we'll take out the numbers and I'll say, okay, how are you going to solve this? And we can say, there were some boys playing soccer and a few more came to play. And so they would just have to think about it, and then they'd say, okay, they have to also know what some means. So you can say, okay, 5 boys play soccer, and then, okay, they have to know what a few would be. And they could say, it can't be, and then they would say, okay, 5 came. And so they would put it all together and make a story, but it would be engaging for their complex thinking. And that way they could, be able to explain it more. And have that problem-solving skill rather than just saying, okay, 9 plus 5 equals this. And they're able to pull out more and be more engaged in what the lesson is talking about.
So it's essentially just making it into a more story and more entertaining experience for the children?
Basically, yeah.
All right. So, Miss Allen, for your first question, what new strategies or teaching approaches did you learn, and how do you plan to implement them in a classroom?
To further what Ms. Logan was talking about, we were talking about the terminology that we use, because you notice she didn't call it a word problem. She called it a number story. And sometimes I think when kids hear the word problem, they immediately become scared. And so we're trying to use more positive terminology and get kids to talking about math and talking the problems out, talking with each other, talking with me, and just talking about it and making sense of it before they ever start trying to work a math problem.
All right. So for your first question, did you notice any common themes or trends in math education during the conference, and how do you think these trends will shape the future of teaching?
I think one of the biggest challenges we have in the high school is a thinking, how can we use math in the real world? And it's a discussion topic we have a lot these days. And there's a disconnect. There's the abstract part of algebra, there's the algorithm part of algebra and math. And how does that translate into something that our students can actually use in real life? And an example would be something like this, where this looks innocuous. This is a Coke bottle, 20 ounces. Doesn't look like there's much there other than a syrupy Coke. A lot of people like it. But let's connect the chemistry and let's connect the math to the real world. If you're able to dig down into this, you can see that this caffeine level, this sugar level, is quite high. There are 64 grams of sugar in this innocuous 20-ounce Coke bottle. Well, if you do the math, 16 sugar packets comprise this 20-ounce Coke bottle. Well, now you can stop there and say, well, that sounds like a lot, and it is, but let's extend it now to the health components. What does this mean now for cholesterol? What does this mean for blood pressure? And all the health effects that go with that. Let's don't stop there. Caffeine, almost 60 milligrams of caffeine in this 20-ounce Coke bottle. Extend it. How long does it take for our body to process and absorb this kind of milligrams of caffeine? And I asked the question to the students, how long do you think? Well, you get 1 hour, 2 hour. We're actually into the 30 hours of time frame to actually process this kind of caffeine level in Coke. pH doesn't look like it's a problem, but the pH of Coke is 2.5. The pH of battery acid is 0.8. So yes, you can clean your battery terminals with this 20-ounce Coke bottle. Pressure, there's almost 60 pounds of PSI pressure in this carbonated bottle. Now, we can't contain it, but if we were able to set up a system, we could actually fill up a tire with this kind of setup. So the message is, let's try and not disconnect ourselves from math. Let's try and pull together the data that's all around us and use that to our, obviously, successes in life. So that's the big takeaway I got from the conference, is attaching and connecting math to the real world.
So you saying you can just use math to figure out if a drink or a food item is healthy or not to help further students and other people's health?
This is an example, but data is all around us. We just take the time now to dig into the data and pull the information out and then do some analysis. And back to your point, I thought it was a good point. Let's make it a story. It doesn't have to be an abstract piece of information. It can be something that's entertaining and something that people can actually maybe get their claws into and dig into.
All right, so Ms. Logan, moving back on to the little ones. In early math education, is building foundational skills critical, and how did the sessions you attended address helping young learners develop strong number sense and problem-solving skills?
First, it's absolutely critical. In fact, one of the sessions that I went to, it talks about how typically when people think of kindergarten, you think, oh, we're just counting to 10 or counting, maybe to 20, but they need so much more than that to start building on what they need later for, say, fourth grade. The count for number sense, you have to know your numbers. You have to know how they break down. So we're even learning place value at this point, where we have ones and we have tens and even hundreds. And just having those building blocks alone can take something you learn later in fourth grade and say, oh, I know that. I'm not even worried that I don't know that. And it is so crucial to have those pieces in place before they go on any further for their math skills later.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to that, or do you want to move on to your next question?
Go ahead.
All right. Sorry, Miss Allen, but I'm going to ask her question. How do you plan, doodles. How did the conference address differentiating instruction for young learners and diverse needs and abilities?
First off, I like to say kindergarten is the best at taking diverse learners and their abilities. We're constantly moving. We're constantly using manipulatives. We're constantly taking things in our real world and using them for, say, we'll do collection counting, and it can be something, going back to Mr. Spencer's Coke bottle, it could be as easy as using a lid, and they have a bunch of lids in the bag, and they can pull them out, and they can count them out, and we're constantly using things and moving in different activities. We're not just based in paper and pencil, and I feel like we need more of that as they get older. They don't see that as often.
So by like little collecting bag thing, do you mean like a little makeshift version of like the little table, which it's like 1, 10, 5, and so on and so on?
Kind of. So it's basically, it can be anything. Honestly, the sky's the limit within reason of size. If it can fit in the bag, we saw little counters, like little bears. We use cubes. We can use Coke lids. We can use leaves. We can use little pumpkins. As the fall season happens. You can use bows for Christmas, those kind of things. And they just basically pull them out, and they arrange them however they want. And you're kind of guiding them, but also allowing them to explore in that area, and just kind of laying them out. And so if they lay them out in a line, you can say, oh, that's really organized. I like how you did that. Can you show me how you count your, say, bows? Can you show me how you count those? Or if somebody has them kind of in a pile, they have it organized a little bit, but you can even extend that and say, oh, I see that you have them all right here and you kind of laid them out. How can we make it where they look a little more organized? And you can use that as kind of getting them in that mindset of putting them in, like, you start here and you go like 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on.
All right, so this is for Miss Allen. Did you learn any new ways to make math more engaging and fun for elementary students?
Yes, we did a lot of. I think by the time they get up in 4th and 5th grade, we have done a lot of paper pencil, and we talked about using a lot more manipulatives, and like Mr. Spencer talked about doing things in real life. Like before we started learning about multiplication, we just had a conversation about, if you had 5 shirts and 3 pairs of pants, how many outfits could you make out of that? And so then it gets them to talking, well, I can make, and they separate 1 pair of pants with each shirt, and going through it. And then I would say something like, what happened if I bought a new shirt or I bought a new pair of pants? How many more outfits could I have? And let them see how they're going to use it in real life before they ever actually start using the mathematical concept. They're doing it without knowing they're doing it.
So I have another one for you as well. How do you plan to support students who struggle with math, especially with the new ideas you've encountered at the conference?
I think a lot of it is, just having them have a growth mindset. They talk about that a lot, especially when they're younger. But when they get a little older, we kind of forget about that. And we need to, and do it in smaller steps, 1 step at a time, because math is a building. And if you don't have a foundation, your building falls. So you have to have a good foundation, and each step has to be built upon before you go to the next step.
So this is for Mr. Spencer. High school students often face more advanced math topics like calculus, statistics, trigonometry, algebra, a bunch of variables. Now, what are some new ways you learn to help students master these challenging subjects?
Yeah, it is challenging because we have such a large and diverse curriculum that we have to address. But back to the point of just concepts. Sometimes we get wrapped up too much into the numbers, into the algorithms, and we forget some of the basics behind why these numbers need to work. So, for example, in quadratics, it sounds like a big word, but basically we use that to shape how our cell phones work, how our radio telescopes work, how these rockets launch, how we throw a baseball, how we throw a football. Quadratics is behind those kind of behaviors and those kind of functions. Now we're talking about modeling real life again. We're trying to bring real life back into the picture, whether it's calculus, whether it's algebra, whether it's trigonometry. How can we model a real life situation? It could be a COVID model. It could be an opioid crisis model. But these are real life models where we use exponential functions. We use calculus to predict what these outcomes might look like. And I think engaging our students into these kind of questions and problems creates some enthusiasm, and trying to build that confidence that we've talked about, and that motivation can come from actually seeing some things that they can put their hands on.
So this year you implemented a new group project or group work, I guess is the right way you would say it. Now, how do you plan to incorporate that into a larger scale for the school, or is it just for your classes so far?
Well, right now, this was a test to try and see if we could bring groups of students together. We call it pods, but basically it's people working together. It's somewhat of an experiment because we're trying to see if we can actually engage students in a way that they can ask questions, learn from each other, and build confidence by working with each other. And this is going to be new because some of us haven't learned how to actually work together in these situations. And so we're going to try and encourage these groups to take on problems and work them out as groups, and maybe not rely on so much of, say, me, or some of the other teachers and get them to self-reinforce and self-regulate more and more and take more confidence and more accountability into some of these decisions.
All right, so this is for Miss Logan. If you can implement one major change in how math is taught based on what you learned, what would it be?
I would have to say probably, especially for my age group, I would say our problem-solving skills, and how our kiddos at our age level are learning how to think more abstract, I guess, and also teaching independence with our problem-solving skills. That way, by the time they get to, say, Miss Allen in 4th grade, they have that foundation of, okay, I can solve this. And then even into middle school and high school, just basically just being able to solve a problem and not feel defeated and feel confident in that.
All right, so this is for Miss Allen. Were there any misconceptions or challenges in math education that the conference helped clarify for you?
One thing that comes to mind in particular is like fractions. We tend to think of those as just smaller numbers rather than as parts of a whole. And I think that if we, get the kids talking, and like he was talking about learning to work together, to solve problems together, instead of, if I wait long enough, Miss Allen will help me do it. That if we get the kids talking, they can see concepts like the fractions or the place value and how they come together without us explicitly having to tell them, but letting them discover it a little bit on their own.
All right, so this is the last question of the day, and this is for Mr. Spencer. What's one takeaway from the conference that you believe will have a lasting impact on your teaching career?
I think a lot of it is self-discovery, that all of our learners and all of our students see things differently. And it's being able to recognize that they have different takes on the subject, they have different takes on life, different takes on how they see things. And I think that was a big realization for me, and it's a reaffirmation, that all of our learners and students should be looked at as just distinct and unique individuals. And we're trying to find that one strength that we can identify and pull from so that we can take that stepping stone that we've talked about in terms of building more confidence, building more interest, and not being so self-defeated. So building interest, finding that one strength, I think, was the reaffirmation for me.
Piggybacking off of kind of what Mr. Spencer said, with group work, it is so important. We start teaching at a very young age, and especially in my group, how our kiddos, they don't know how to work together at our age level. And so we have to teach them how to talk to one another, how to interact with one another. So hopefully by the time they get to Mr. Spencer, they've already been working together and they can use, we always teach them kind words. You can disagree with somebody and you can, typically you'll hear, well, I don't like that. And I was like, look, you can disagree with somebody. You can say, I don't like that because, and you can, instead of lashing out, but working within a group and project-based information, we want to be able to teach them to work together because eventually they're going to grow up. They're going to become adults in society, and by the time they leave us, we want to make sure that they are functioning human beings who can work with one another and making sure that they are able to interact positively for the most part.
All right, so there was something else we wanted to go over. It was CPA, right?
Well, just like she said, we're not teaching children, we're teaching future adults. And we want them to be able to apply their skills, in real life. And so we need to teach them, especially like in math. Anybody can do math as long as you follow the rules. But if you don't know why the rules are in place, you can't apply it. So we try to do something concrete, something pictorial, and then that's where the algorithm comes in, and that's when they learn the rule, after they know why we have the rule in place.
All right, so is there anything else you'd like to add to that? Alrighty then. All right, so this is the last question of the day, and this is for Mr. Spencer. What's one takeaway from the conference that you believe will have a lasting impact on your teaching career?
I think a lot of it is self-discovery, that all of our learners and all of our students see things differently. And it's being able to recognize that they have different takes on the subject, they have different takes on life, different takes on how they see things. And I think that was a big realization for me, and well, it's a reaffirmation, that all of our learners and students should be looked at as just distinct and unique individuals. And we're trying to find that one strength that we can identify and pull from so that we can take that stepping stone that we've talked about in terms of building more confidence, building more interest, and not being so self-defeated. So building interest, finding that one strength, I think, was the reaffirmation for me.
All right, so is there anything any three of you want to add before we end off today, or?
No, thank you for the time.
All right. Well, we appreciate you guys coming on. So today I am with Miss Allen, Mr. Spencer, and Miss Logan. And that's the ending for this episode, and we'll see you guys next time.